All right, boom. So we're kicking off. Well, we're not really upset, but we are like alive. We're thriving. So, um, boom. This is the Angels in Politics broadcast, and I am the creative and artistic manifestation of Angels in Politics, the white collar goon. So, how are you today? Have you had your breakfast? Have you had a meal as of yet? Okay, that's all right. Right now, this is a special day. Well, I don't know how special it is. Every day is special, actually. But I have a little, well, I can't say little, it's almost running over, of coffee. But this is not a normalcy at this point. Like, I don't think I've had coffee since last week. So, just, taking it one day at a time. Today, I felt like, hey, I'm not going out for my run due to, well, I can't really say it's the weather. It's a fine day to run, but I was just feeling like today wasn't the day. Today I should have I should be doing this, communicating with you all. I could of course communicate with you and still have gone for a run, but yeah, I just didn't feel like today was the day for that. I might do a little bit of yoga later on, and we'll get that day going. I would like to hear about yourself though, and how you've been holding up. This is, I don't know, maybe like the second week of being quote unquote quarantine. I mean, let's not put that quote unquote, like the state is shut down for sure. So people have been out of work, kids have been out of school. Um, Both of my parents are home. Like my mom is already retired, but now my dad's home. He's working from home. Everybody's working from home. And yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting for a lot of people, but like I've mentioned before, I think this is a time in which um, God is God isn't putting anybody through um, these particular trials um, if He didn't believe that we would overcome it. He wouldn't put us through something that we couldn't deal with. So this is to make us stronger, but this is also a self-effacing moment, uh, introspective moment or period in time for us to look inwardly. Since we can't go out, we can go inwardly or go intrinsically and figure out ourselves and sort out um, certain patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking that have encumbered us, have limited us, or has prevented us from being the optimal version of ourselves, the most um, self-realized, self-actualized version. In other ways, or in other words, the archetypal, you know, self, or the archetypal superhero that we are, the quintessential superheroes that you are. So, um, figure that out or take your time. It's not like you're gonna figure it out in one day or in 2 days or in 2 weeks, but through meditation, through meditation and prayer, through um, reading, writing, various forms of expression, through just taking time and just surrendering your ego, surrendering your pride, surrendering yourself to God. Um, these types of things can these answers that you're looking for will manifest, and they have said when the student is ready, the master will appear, or when the student is ready, the teacher or the leader or the guru will appear. So it's not me who's the teacher or who's the master. I'm saying you will be prepared to enter that next phase of life once you have once you've asked God for that transformation. Once you've asked God for that that uh that path to self actualization and self realization, you'll be you'll be blown away by the tremendous changes and shifts in your life and in your character, in every area of activity, every area of expression will change as a result. So boom, be prepared for that. I give you that like beginning spiel, but like today, like the topic is not about that at all. Well, I guess all the topics are about that, but there is a topic that I would like to speak with you about today, and It's a tough one. You know, it's a tough one. It's one I'm passionate about. Somebody might be listening and say, well, you're passionate about everything, but and you could be right about that. But this is about the ways, and I've mentioned this before, the ways that men, boys, guys, fellas, whatever you want to call us, the way that we treat women differently based on their looks. All right. Um, the treatment of women is contingent upon how we personally value you in physical terms, your almost your sexual market value, almost like your physiology, your anatomy, your biology, your aesthetic. All of that is a culmination of what we classify as the archetypal beautiful person, the quintessential, the perfection of divine feminine. Like every guy has different parameters, different guidelines as to what he or she, or well, let's just talk about guys, what he provides or what he describes to be hot, fit, sexy, incredulous, incredible, outstanding, unfathomable is the term. Maybe like, wow, I can't, it's inconceivable how beautiful you are. You're so beautiful that I don't think I should be able to have a chance with you. That type of thing. You're out of my league, okay, so to speak. So that's the divine feminine. That's the apex of beauty. And every guy has their different, you know, parameters, as to what that may be. So I'll tell you this. There was a time, there was a time when I was in like the first grade. It must have been the first grade. Um, and I was riding the bus. Maybe the bus was 244. I mean, that was just a big thing. Maybe that was like Crestwood bus. So this was like before that. This is like intermediate school, being like primary school. So intermediate was like third, fourth, fifth grade. So this is primary school. So yeah, first grade maybe, first grade, second grade. And there was this young woman who was in my neighborhood named Jessica, and actually she's doing quite well for herself now. She lives in I don't know, she might be in the East Village right now, but she used to live in Brooklyn whenever I moved out there, and she's doing her thing, um, doing incredibly well for herself. But I remember, like, I thought she was pretty. She still is very pretty, but at first grade, in the first grade, I saw that. I was like, oh, I like her. Like, she's pretty, right? So instead of being a grown up, right? 'Cause how old are you when you're in the first grade, right? Maybe six, maybe seven. Um, I remember being sitting not next to her, like in the seats that they have in like in those bus rows, but like maybe the one that was adjacent to her seat. Um, or maybe like a seat behind her or something like that. But anyways, I was in, you know, close proximity to her. Like I was in arm's length of where she was sitting. And these last few stops where like the bus was kind of empty, so it was me and it was her. And I think after her stop, I was like two stops after that. And I remember just being silly, like instead of like most guys at this moment, and it has no really there is there isn't a age limit as to like why guys are this way, but instead of just like talking to her, I was being silly to cause attention. So I was singing some song, and like if you've heard me sing, you know what that sounds like. But I was singing a song in some weird voice, and I was like talking about some silly things like, oh, I wish I was a cantaloupe, or some stupid things like something goofy, something shocking, something that was just literally a way for her to like turn around and notice me, right? Just to be blatantly honest, right? I was singing loud so she could hear me and saying some ridiculous things so she could take note of it, so she could engage me in some sort of way, right? And it's funny that I thought about it this morning when I was making the coffee, because it's like guys do some of the most ridiculous things. Like, it's not practical, it's not pragmatic, it's not logical. I mean, and I don't think I was going to be that practical or pragmatic at 6 years old or 7 years old, but at 27, at 37, at 57, guys are still this way. Um, so it was strictly about like, yo, I just wanted her to notice me, and hopefully if she would have turned around and said, why are you singing some silly song, or if she would have turned around and laughed and said, oh, you're funny, then I would have been like, felt good about it, and then maybe I would have like talked to her more and said something. But she was like like uh like what you would presume from a lady, a young lady at that time. She just did it, made a point not to give me any attention. Like, she heard it. There's no way she couldn't have heard it, but she didn't like turn around and say like, wow, that's some good shit. Like, it was just like, one of those things, like, let me not say anything and hopefully he will stop, right? And I want that to be like the springboard of this conversation, because um when guys do find girls that they like, or when they do find a beautiful woman in their presence, instead of the rational brain clicking in and saying, hey, she's a human being like everybody else, um just say hello, just start up a conversation in the same way you would talk to a friend of yours who wasn't somebody who you thought was like ostensibly attractive, somebody who you thought was like the archetype that you're looking for, or whatever the case may be. But like, it's not, that's not how we process it, right? Conversely, conversely, there's an there's a an inverse in the way we present ourselves to women that we don't find to be quote unquote hot, quote unquote sexy, quote unquote gorgeous, or that divine feminine, or just the apex of femininity in our regards, right? So I found that whenever friends of mine, and we'll just talk about me, when I was around girls who I didn't think were like, oh, she's gonna be the lady for me or some shit like that, I found that I was much more, comfortable. I was much more free with who I was. I mean, was I still silly and trying to sing some crazy songs? Like, probably. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was somewhat of a class clown in school, and even now, somebody might say, Gabe, you're silly. You're a clown now. And a lot of people don't want to be called that. Like, but it is what it is. If you enjoy yourself and you like to make people laugh, or you don't mind being laughed at the expense of yourself, like being like self-deprecating, then some people might just call that a ham. You're just a ham, whatever. But like, yeah, like, uh I was more, unfiltered or unhindered or uninhibited would be the term that I'll use, around women who were just cool, who I felt were cool. Like, oh, I'm not trying to impress you. So since I'm not trying to impress you, I can be myself around you, right? And I think that's an interesting point. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I remember I remember it like it was not too long ago. It was well over 10 years ago. But I remember that there were these young ladies who went to a different school, and my friend, he used to go to my school, high school, and then he ended up going to a different one, that was like 20 minutes away or whatever the case may be. But some of the girls that he knew from that school, I knew them as well. So I remember one of our homegirls was like, "Yo, like, we're going to the beach," and I live 20 minutes from Virginia Beach, like the ocean front. So I mean, and I'm really blessed to have been brought up and raised near a large body of water, because there are plenty of people who live in Middle America or whatever, in the middle of their state, and they're not near large bodies of water or the ocean. Period. So that's a different story altogether. But homegirl was like, yo, me and my friends are going to the beach, come meet us up and come hang out and, chill. And I remember telling my homie, like, yo, whoop-de-whoop is up at the beach, like, let's make this move, like, let's pull up. And he was down, and he was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then I remember, like, on the way to pick him up or something like that, or maybe it was on the way to pick him up, or before I left the house, I let him know. It was like, yeah, it's gonna be this person, that person, and another girl. And he was like, oh, well, nah, man, I'm not trying to go. And I was like, wait, why not? Like, what's up? And he was like, because those girls weren't what he would classify as pretty to him, or they weren't beautiful to him, or they weren't in his parameters for what was fit. So he was like, yo, this girl is big, or this girl is that. And in his mind, and he articulated this, yo, people are going to think that we're with these girls if we're out there hanging out with them, because we literally would be physically with them if we're like at the beach together. But he was thinking about his like reputation, so to speak. Like, I don't want to be seen in public with these girls who aren't quote unquote pretty, because then people might think that I am of lower value. Or then they might think something of me because, like, wow, why is he with these girls? Maybe he's dating these girls. Maybe whatever the downward spiral was. But he changed his mind. He didn't want to come to the beach anymore once he found out who the girls were. Um he's not an anomaly in that sense. He's not an outlier. There are a lot of guys who I knew who were like that. And he would be that kind of guy too when we were in the beach, or when we would go out when in public places, mostly the ocean front. That's where a lot of us used to pick up girls. Even now, you still pick up girls at the ocean front, whether you're in California, Santa Monica, whether you're in Venice Beach, whether you're in South Beach, whether you're in Redondo Beach, whether you're in Sydney, Australia. Like, going to the beach is where people go to meet, and you're seen, and women are beautiful, and guys are handsome, and you can go and be yourself, and have that exchange of conversation, and see where it goes. But it was interesting because he's not an outlier. There are a lot of guys who don't want to present themselves, or be around, or surround themselves, or engage with women in a public setting if they don't find them to be like what is quote unquote attractive. It's like, hey, do you want to talk to those girls at the bar? Nah, I'm cool, man. I'm not attracted to them. You're not attracted to them, so that means you don't want to speak to them. Yeah, well, since I don't want to have sex with them, that means I shouldn't have a conversation with them. Like, this is literally the logic. And it's even reinforced, I would say, by some like text, like some like literature by Rollo Tomasi talks about this. Rollo Tomasi has a book called A Rational Male, and I had a friend of mine who mentioned this whenever I was living at the ashram, and he was like, he doesn't befriend women unless he sees himself having sex with them, or unless he wants to have sex with them, meaning he's not making female friends, he's not making friends with women, he's not engaging women to say hi, hello, and be friend zone. That's the term that we use of the past, I don't know, 10 years or some shit. Like, guys don't want to be friend zoned, so a way that he deviates from this is like, unless I see you as a candidate to have intercourse, I won't talk to you at all, which is which is interesting. But I mean, it's a way that people go. But for my friend, I don't even think it was like that. It was that deep. I don't even think it was like, oh, I can't have sex with those girls, or they're not beautiful enough for me to have sex with them, so it's like I don't want to be seen with them. It was more so like he had a lower sense of, I don't know if self-esteem is the word, because I don't even know if like self-esteem is a real thing, but it's like, maybe it was confidence is what I'm trying to say. Maybe he had a low self-image of himself that he believed if he was around these girls that would place him in a inferior role, or maybe he would lower his market value, or maybe it would be perceived from the outside looking in, and who was this quote unquote outside, that he was less than by being with these certain kind of girls. And this brings me to my next point. It also talks about like how guys can have that numerical hierarchical or hierarchical like structure in place on like a ranking system. Like, she's bad, she's a 10, she's a dime piece, she's a, like, well, I used to say back when I was in high school or in early college, I say she's the gold. I used to use that term, like, she's the gold. Like, the gold meaning like the quintessential. The gold meaning she's the dime. The gold meaning she is the one that you cuff. She is the precious metal of like the precious metal that never loses its value. That always retains its value. That always increases in value. Like, so she's the gold, she's the diamond, she's the dime piece, she's the 10, she's bad, she's tough. I used to say that. She's solid. She's all of these terms in which will convey a an image or a projection of almost like superiority, or this projection of um I don't know, of being of a certain status that is deemed formidable, something that you should revere, something that you should exalt, right? Like, you should praise, you should put this on a pedestal because of whatever standards I have in my head. She's a 10, she's a dime. But it's interesting because what gives us as a guy, what gives us as men the wherewithal to place women on this numerical value as like a 1 to 10. Like, if she's a 10, then what is this woman next to her, right? She's not a 10, I guess. Or if she's a dime, if she's a bad whatever, if she's this, then what are the rest of the women who don't get that, who don't have that moniker attached to them, right? Who don't have this nomenclature that's hovering over their head. It's like, okay, like, imagine if women were like that and they were just, and they just walked by and saw guys and was like, okay, he's a 10. You know, he's incredibly handsome. He's the apex. He's the divine masculine. And you're sitting there listening to her like, well, damn, what about me, homegirl? You might be sitting there like, why don't I get that type of like response? Why don't you say, you didn't mention me? Like, if he's a 10 and he's a 10, then where the fuck am I in this equation? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know, like, it is interesting on how we play, on how we use these terms. But I'll wrap this up. um I don't know why. Well, I guess I do know why. Like, I don't know if it is because of low self-esteem or a low self-image or a low sense of value for yourself, as to why guys feel the need to alter or augment their behavior in positive or negative ways, as it pertains to the women that are around them, as it pertains to the quote unquote status of beauty, or the status of beauty as it pertains to women. Because I'll just give you this quote from Zan Perion, and he's one of those guys who are really well renowned in the pickup community. But he's written books about dating, and he does seminars and all that type of stuff about self esteem and getting guys out there, or even to women, and building your self esteem. But he says many a times, like, charm isn't something like a light switch in which you can turn off and on. It's not like, oh, I can be charming and be handsome and be cool and suave with and be just a dignified and virtuous male with this woman or these set of women, or this set of women, but in regards to the women who don't look like this, then I'm not going to be charming. I'm not going to be nice. I'm not going to be cool, and that serves, it speaks volumes because it's going to be to your detriment, guys. Like the way that I tried to like sing and get that, Jessica, get that Jessica archetype, attention when I was in the first grade. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's more so like it showed at an early age, like I was willing to do like silly things to get attention for women, and that's not the same as me treating other women bad or whatever the case may be, but it showed that I was willing to do certain things for her or for this type of girl, but I wasn't willing to do it with other women, or I'm willing to go out of my way to help this woman like be chivalrous and open the door, or help pick up, her dropped books or something in the hallway if she looks like, the archetype that you find in the movies. But like for a homegirl who doesn't fit that archetype, it's like, are you not helping her with her books? Are you not opening the door for her? And it's like, no, guys, that's to your detriment, because you're not going to receive that energy from women. You're not going to receive that love and admiration. You're not going to receive that archetypal, quintessential divine feminine by you picking and choosing who you choose to be the archetype for, who you choose to be the handsome, suave, charismatic, caring, and compassionate guy for. So that's what I have to say about that. Namaste and namaskar.